So Kim, you going for a big giant statement after?
The Democratic debates ended just moments ago, and we are coming to you live from New York, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, we are completely live. I can prove it. This is how I can prove it. You see, it's a newspaper. Anyway, here we are, night 2 of the Democratic debates. And there has been so much excitement around these debates. Basically, everybody has been watching them. And I mean everybody.
Hey, Twitter world, it's me, yours truly, sitting at my house, waiting to watch this debate, to hear a bunch of people who think they're capable of running our country. It should be interesting, because to be honest, I don't know most of these guys, but I'm interested to hear what they have to say, and I think every American should be watching this. So, I guess we got about 38 minutes to go, so won't be long now. Take care.
Oh, man. Dude, OJ kills me. Allegedly. I love how he just tries to act like he's a completely normal guy, right? Because he's not a normal guy. He's one of the greatest running backs of all time. What are you doing? No, but seriously though, I found this video super suspicious, right? Part of me thinks OJ was just doing this to try and set up an alibi. You know, it's just like, Mr. Simpson, we found 6 dead bodies in your front yard. It couldn't have been me. You saw my Twitter post. I was watching the debates. I saw myself. And OJ doesn't realize how much power he has, right? Because if he really wanted to screw a candidate over, you realize all he'd have to do is endorse them. Yeah? He could just be like, I wouldn't be where I was today without my brother Cory Booker. Everything I've done was because of you, Cory. No. Now, we don't know what OJ thought of the debates, but we do know what President Trump thought of them last night, because he tweeted his one-word takeaway, boring. And I mean, yeah, let's be honest, everyone is boring, right, compared to him. Yeah, he's the craziest dude on the planet. Asking Trump to weigh in on normal politicians is like asking heroin what it thinks of coffee, okay? But he's not totally wrong. He's not totally wrong. Last night's debate was fairly civil. And when tonight's debate started, it looked like it was going to be more of the same. It even began the same. It was the same telenovela that we started last night.
I want to say hello and good evening, buenas noches to Mayor Buttigieg.
Buenas noches, gracias de invitarnos.
Gusto verlo, caballero.
Ooh, Mayor, pick up the Spanish. Hey! You know Beto O'Rourke was at home going, ay, Dios mío, these gringos are stealing my swag! And I bet wherever Trump was, he was like, can we deport the Democrats? So it started off the same. As for the topics, again, it seemed like it was going to be more of the same. For instance, on taxes, the Democrats were pretty much on the same page.
We can make massive cuts in the $1.6 trillion in tax loopholes out there, and I would be going about eliminating Donald Trump's tax cuts for the wealthy.
On day one, I will repeal that tax bill that benefits the top 1% and the biggest corporations in America.
Will you raise taxes for the middle class in a Sanders administration?
Yes, they will pay more in taxes.
Wow. Yeah, Bernie just said he's going to raise taxes on the middle class. At a debate. That's not a popular opinion, and that's why I keep giving props to Bernie Sanders. He keeps it real, right? A lot of politicians, they would lie. They'd be like, oh, no, and then they would raise it. But he gives it to you straight, which is great for a politician, horrible for a doctor. Can you imagine Bernie? You just come out and be like, your grandpa's not going to make it. The cancer's got his balls. You might as well say bye-bye right now. Bye-bye. It's over. And just like yesterday, everyone was waiting to see if the unknowns would shock us with something that they said. But it turned out today, the unknowns were shocked when they got a chance to speak.
Senator Bennett, you have said, quote, it's possible to write policy proposals that have no basis in reality. You might as well call them candy. Were you referring to any candidate or proposal in particular when you said that?
Was that directed to me?
Yes, that was
thank
a
you.
quote.
That sounded like me. Thank you.
It was you.
I appreciate it.
What? Oh, that was so adorable. No, because he's genuinely shocked that they say these names. Like, was that for me? Was that? Because that's the first time this has happened the whole campaign. You realize that? Yeah. He's like, wait, you guys can see me? I thought this whole time I was Bernie's imaginary friend. Now, one of the big topics tonight was health care. And the Democrats are aligned, but they have a range of opinions. It went all the way from Medicare for all, right, with no private insurance, to whatever Marianne Williamson was talking about.
Where tens of millions of people are prepared to stand up and tell the insurance companies and the drug companies that their day is gone, that health care is a human right, not something to make huge profits off of.
I'm against any Democrat who opposes that takes down Obamacare and any Republican who wants to get rid of it.
Let me turn this. We have to have a health care guarantee. If you're sick, you're seen, and in America, you never go broke because of it.
I'll tell you one thing. It's really nice if we got all these plans, but if you think we're going to beat Donald Trump by just having all these plans, you've got another thing coming. Because he didn't win by saying he had a plan. He won by simply saying, make America great again.
What?
What?
It's a pretty bold move for a candidate to say, I'm anti-plan, okay? Like her vibe, I was just waiting for at some point to be like, we don't need a plan, my friends. Just give me one vial of CBD oil and our chakras will be aligned. So at this point, night 2 seemed fairly chilled. But it didn't take long for people to remember that this is a race.
Because we'll stop the greed of the insurance companies.
On this issue, we have to think about how this affects real people and the reality of $5,000 deductible when they walk through those doors. That's what insurance companies are doing in America today.
We're going to continue this discussion. I want us to put it in candidates, please.
Yeah, what up?
Joe's generation. Part of Joe's generation. Let me respond. The issue, if I may say, is not generational.
Please.
The issue is not generational. The issue is who has the guts to take on Wall Street.
Bernie! Who is dumb enough to engage with Bernie in a shouting match? You realize there were 10 people on stage shouting, and the moderators, and he outshouts them all. Yeah. He's like, that's right, and just wait until I turn on my mic. So, things were really starting to heat up. But the action of the night, the thing everybody's going to be talking about, really started when Eric Swalwell took the first shot at frontrunner Sleepy Joe.
I was 6 years old when a presidential candidate came to the California Democratic Convention and said, it's time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans. That candidate was then Senator Joe Biden. Joe Biden was right when he said it was time to pass the torch to a new generation of Americans 32 years ago. He's still right today. If we're going to solve the issues of our nation, pass the torch. If we're going to solve solve the issues of climate chaos, pass the torch. If we're going to solve the issue of student loan debt, pass the torch. If we're going to end gun violence for families who are fearful of sending their kids to school, pass the torch.
Vice President, would you like to sing a torch song?
I would. I'm still holding on to that torch.
That's right. Biden is not letting go of that torch. Even though that torch is really uncomfortable and told Biden that it does not like the way that he's holding on to it, he's holding on to that torch. Oh, and just by the way, it was really funny because Swalwell tried to use the same torch line on Bernie later in the debate, which totally failed, right? Because it's not going to work on Bernie the same way. How are you going to tell him to let go of the torch when he invented fire? It's not the same thing. Now, I don't know if it was Swalwell, but the sharks could just smell blood in the water. All I know is Biden had a target on his back. And the way it started didn't even come from him, right? It didn't come from him. It didn't come from Swalwell. No, Marianne Williamson, she was endorsing reparations. She was talking about race. And Kamala Harris was like, the rest of you need to sit your asses down.
I do not believe that the average American is a racist, but the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in the United States.
Ms. Williamson, thank you very much.
Vice President Biden, we're going to get to you. Hang on, we're going to get
On stage, I would like to speak on the issue of race.
Wow! Yeah!
About the history of race in the United States.
Ms. Williamson, thank you very much.
Vice President Biden, we're going to get to you. Hang on, we're going to get
On stage, I would like to speak on the issue of race.
Wow! Yeah! You know, people always accuse black people of playing the race card, but that was the right time. The race card. And by the way, for those asking, the race card is a real card, yes. I had one too, but I used it already to get a free Jamba Juice. Like, we have it for different reasons. So the issue of race had now been brought up at the debates. And you might remember Biden had some problems with that last week when he seemed to be pro the relationships with segregationists and talking about how they were good people. So now that Kamala had the floor, she was going to wipe it with Biden.
I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden. I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Holy shit. She just pulled an M. Night Shyamalan. She was black the whole movie. I didn't see that coming. Did you see that coming? That moment was so brutal on Joe Biden. For the first time, I wanted to give him a massage. And it didn't get any better from there.
Do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well,
I
there
did
was
not
a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision.
So that's where the federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
Isn't this the part where someone's supposed to throw in a towel? Isn't that how this works? Yo, because at this point, Kamala was busing Biden right out of the debate. She was killing it. everything she said made sense. She was connecting with the crowd. She had him. And Biden, like, he seemed like he was angry. He wasn't looking at her. He wasn't connecting. I didn't even know if he was, like, messed up in his mind. All I know is Biden wasn't having a good time. Seriously, Biden hasn't had such an intense standoff with a black woman since Michelle caught him sneaking a Big Mac to Barack. This hasn't happened to him in a long time. And that moment there with Kamala, that's why you have to love black women. Yeah, you have to love them. You think they've forgotten what you did. And out of nowhere, they will spring that shit in. My mom would do that shit to me all the time. She'd be like, Trevor, you remember that food you stole in 1991? I'd be like, no, mommy! And you could tell Biden was pissed. You could tell that he was shook. You could tell that this had become Kamala Harris's night. Because Joe Biden did something that no one on that debate stage has ever done. He cut himself off.
I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that every... 91,
Boozy, what's up, bro? Listen to what he said he voted for on the Voting Rights Acts. And this is what I try to tell everybody all the time. Listen to what Biden says real quick.
And you could tell Biden was pissed. You could tell that he was shook. You could tell that this had become Kamala Harris's night. Because Joe Biden did something that no one on that debate stage has ever done. He cut himself off.
I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years.
I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years.
Got to the plate.
Joe Biden did something that no one on that debate stage has ever done. He cut himself off.
I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got
the Voting Rights Act is what gives African Americans the ability to vote. He extended it for 25 years. And then what happens at the end of that 25 years? It has to be voted on and ratified again. Or it can be vetoed and nullified out of existence. The Voting Rights Act is an act. It's not a law. African Americans do not have the absolute right to vote in this country. And that privilege can be taken away from us every 25 years. They have to renew it every 25 years. It's not something that's stable and will stay there permanently. It's not. So when you think like America's great, like, no. They still got to vote on whether we get a vote or not every 25 years. Because this is not your country. This land ain't made for you. Yeah, why ain't it a law? Because it's just an act. And he helped it get extended for 25 years. White people don't have a Voting Rights Act where, you know, every 25 years they may or may not have the privilege of voting.
Where we got...
He cut himself off.
I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, anyway, my time's up. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Vice President.
Yeah. After Kamala did what she did to you tonight, Joe Biden, your time might be up. We'll be right back.
Hey, bro. Motherfucker never talk about the Voting Rights Act. You never talk about reparations, free education, nothing. That was his main thing, just Obamacare. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? But he's mulatto at the same time, so he got both halves in him. That what really pushed him to even become president. He's just charismatic, but do he only care about black people? No. And you'll never get a real black president, like somebody who's like who would put the African American at the forefront of his agenda. You just can't have a president like that, and they'll never let you get a black president like that. You know what I'm saying? That's all they give you every once in a while is like a Colin Powell, a Condoleezza Rice. They gave you Obama as a deception and a bandage for a minute, because Obama came right on the heels of Bush Jr. And Bush Jr. got us into this whole Operation Freedom Iraq, this new war in the Middle East, a generational war, post 9/11 surveillance, and all this other stuff. And so the country was kind of like on the edge of fucking revolt against the established government, and people wanted change so bad after we started realizing how much this country really just blatantly lies to us. And then so they gave us Obama as this, this bright shining hope, this knight in shining armor, that he just calmed the whole country down. It's like, see people, there is change. I'm an African American and I'm the president, and things are getting better, and no one needs to really question what the government is doing. And so he just calmed everybody down for 8 years and pacified everybody with more government programs and government aid and unemployment, and made this Obamacare thing seem like it was something good, when in actuality Obama didn't sit down and write up 2,000 pages of healthcare reform. He just didn't. It was already on the shelf when he got there, and if it was him or Perry or whoever was running against, whoever would have been the perfect candidate for that period, that healthcare bill would have had their name on it. So it wouldn't have mattered who became president. It's just Obamacare because he got the seat that year. What? Yeah, did he really do anything for the black population in America as a whole? I really doubt it. I don't see anything. Motherfuckers is in the hood before Obama was president, and motherfuckers still in the hood now that he's not president. There were no dramatic changes. Yeah, he wasn't worried about that. And now, I don't listen to the whole debates, but I will, listen to clips of it like this, and just to see what these candidates are talking about, or listen to, some of their personal, individual interviews they've done. I've listened to Andrew Yang a good bit. The black lady, I forgot her name that fast, but I listened to her interview on the Breakfast Club. The one guy from Jersey, the black guy from Jersey, I've listened to his interview on the Breakfast Club. And I don't know, I've been following Bernie since the last election. And I like Bernie too. His first campaign was the audit the Fed. You know what I'm saying? He wanted to audit the Fed, get more control of the finances back into the government hands, and take it away from the banks. But of course, you know, the banks run everything, so I know that campaign was almost doomed to fail.
Of telling people that they got the Congress they voted for.
Can you give me an example that would justify the lack of transparency?
Well, we don't have a lack of transparency. I appear.
You can't audit it. It's a lack of transparency.
So I regard the Federal Reserve as one of the most.
All right, so this lady named Yellen, she's the chair of the Federal Reserve right now, and this is her interview at Janet Yellen, and she's talking to Congress about her role at the Federal Reserve. The prior Reserve chair was Benjamin Bernanke, and he's actually from South Carolina, my home state, and so I don't know. I went and protested him one time, just because it's like, dude, you're really, you know, claiming to be this good Southern boy from the Carolinas, and you're gonna run like one of the most, if not the most corrupt institution in our nation. It's like, you fucking suck for that.
Transparent central banks in the world.
That's a statement. What do you fear about the audit? Give me a real-time example.
So I think the FOMC needs a space in which it can have honest conversations and deliberate in real time about the decisions that we make, without having political influence brought to bear in second-guessing decisions that we have made and opining on them, possibly with the idea of reversing them.
You know, we can discuss things in public that are sensitive, talk about national security. The Supreme Court does the same thing. Just give me one example how it could hurt the Fed being transparent.
Because what you're talking about with the GAO are policy reviews.
Just, no, give me an example, not a general swipe of review. Just say, take, for example, this. If somebody said this, it would be horrible, it would be end of the world for the Fed. Give me an example like that.
So I would envision a situation where the GAO, at the request of members of Congress, might come in and say, at our meeting a week ago, they've taken the transcripts and reviewed what we said. They believe that the decision we made was the wrong one at that particular meeting. And I would say that's an extreme interference and politicization of our ability to make independent monetary policy decisions.
So you're telling me we shouldn't be transparent for the fear of being second-guessed or somebody criticizing you because they thought you were wrong. Do I get it?
What we're talking about is political interference in decision-making by the committee.
I don't see that. If it's after the fact, I don't see the interference in decision-making.
So this is the Federal Reserve spokesperson saying we don't want political interference in our decision makings. We don't want you to say, oh, well, the decision you guys made last week in the meeting may not have been the best decision. You know why? Because they're not a part of the fucking government. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It's not a part of our government at all. It is a completely private industry. And they make money for us. And no, you can't audit us. And no, we don't want any Congress people sitting in or any political people sitting in on our meetings. This is a private business. We have our board of members, and we don't need anybody else. And what we do and how we run the Federal Reserve and how we create money and dish out loans is our business. And the more you guys know about it, the more detrimental it is to us in the way we conduct our business and make our financial policies. And it's just weird that, like, the Fed can talk to the government like that and just like, fuck you, we're not. You're not gonna audit us, and no, you can't sit in on our meetings.
Well, I do, so I...
Well, give me an example.
I gave you an example.
Just give me one example of why they shouldn't have that transparency.
Well,
I gave you an example because we're the Fed and you're not.
I am Terrell Jermaine Starr, senior reporter with The Root, and I'm here with 2020 presidential candidate Andrew Yang.
Hey man, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Right on, brother.
This is Benjamin Bernanke right here.
Logically, independence means political independence, and there have been times when Congress was exerting undue influence and times when the executive has been exerting undue influence. And I don't think, from the point of view of giving the Fed the independence to take the necessary actions to achieve its mandate, I don't think it makes that much difference. The trouble, I have two objections basically to the FRAT bill. The first is that the presumption that the Taylor rule is the right rule or the right kind of rule, I think, is no longer state-of-the-art thinking. There's an excellent paper by Lars Svensson called What's the Matter with Taylor Rules, where he argues that they are not robust responses in complex situations. The Fed has a rule. The Fed's rule is that we will go for a 2% inflation rate, we will go for the natural rate of unemployment, we put equal weight on those two things, we will give you information about our projection, our interest rates. That is a rule, and that is a framework that should clarify exactly what the Fed's doing. My second objection to the bill is I think that while it's in principle, yes, you know, it's about the Fed setting its own rule, I think that in practice that it would be used to some extent to constrain policy in ways that would not be correct given the particular exigencies of the moment. So any rule is going to be a problem when the circumstances change in a way that the rule didn't contemplate. And if the Fed is always taking actions like that and Congress is pushing back and saying, no, you're violating the rule, I think that is less directly than audit the Fed, but I think it still is a way in which Congress would exert undue influence on monetary policy.
Every Fed chairman says the same thing. Y'all not gonna audit us. We don't give a fuck what kind of rules and regulations and laws y'all come up with. The Fed is its own entity, and if y'all still want to make Federal Reserve notes and use that as your main source of currency for your American economy, then there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about it. The Federal Reserve is the fucking beast. My man Ron Paul been talking about audit the Fed too 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people know, like that's one of the main problems in our country is our Federal Reserve Bank and our military spending.
Republican congressman and two-time presidential candidate Ron Paul wants to audit the Federal Reserve, arguing that Americans need to know more about the central bank, especially given the dramatic increases in the size of the bank's balance sheet. He spoke at the Cato Institute June 24, 2009. The full event is available at cato.org.
It's a real delight to be here, and of course, I'm pleased to come here and discuss a subject that fascinates me and has been an interest of mine for not a couple years, but quite a few decades. Matter of fact, it was the monetary issue that first got me interested in running for Congress back in the 70s. And some of you here may even remember the 70s, and they were rather hectic. If you don't remember them, you probably have read about them, and they were very hectic. And I was fascinated with the fact that the Austrian free market economists predicted early on in the 60s that the Bretton Woods arrangement would never last, and it failed. And then that led into chaos of the 70s. But on a lark, I thought I would speak out and run for Congress. And there was a little bit of concern by my wife about this because she considered it a dangerous thing to do. And I couldn't understand that, and to her the danger was that I could end up getting elected. But I guaranteed her that couldn't happen because I was going to be talking about, the Federal Reserve and the Federal Open Market Committee, and who cared about that. But she was more right than I was on that. But the 70s were hectic, and there was a cry, even at that time, to know more about the Federal Reserve. And even that decade was not the first time. The people, through their congressmen, were speaking out and wanted more openness about what the Federal Reserve was doing. Early on, even from 1913 on, there was always somebody talking about it. And interestingly enough, a lot of that sentiment originated in Texas. Anybody remember Wright Patman? He came from a populist viewpoint. He wanted to know more about how Wall Street was being taken care of by the Federal Reserve, and he wanted the books open. And lo and behold, Henry Gonzalez advocated the same thing. But they came not from a free market perspective, but a populist perspective. But at least they were advocating more openness. In 1978, there was a change in the law. It was a law that we're dealing with today, and the law said that the Federal Reserve now can be audited. And you think, well, that's fine and dandy. But interestingly enough, and this is not unusual for Congress, they said, sure, you can be audited except for A, B, C, and D. And of course, A, B, C, and D are all the important things that the Federal Reserve does, whether it has to do with FOMC meetings, whether it has to do with international agreements, deals that they make with other central banks, the international financial organizations. All that is to be kept secret. And so it was more or less exempt from Freedom of Information, Access to Freedom of Information Act. And therefore, really, we don't know a whole lot about what goes on behind the scenes at the Federal Reserve. But conditions have changed dramatically, if you haven't noticed, in this past year. And although I've been talking about it for decades and arguing that we had a financial system that was very friable, very vulnerable, and it was the Fed that was creating the bubbles. And therefore, we should be looking into it and preventing these problems rather than waiting for cataclysmic financial crisis to hit. But and there were more than a few talking about that. But nevertheless, Congress and others were receiving too much benefit by a secretive Federal Reserve system that created money out of thin air and was able to finance big government. So there were two groups over the Hill that loved this setup. The one group, the conservatives, they loved it because you could finance war without being responsible. And the left liked it because you could finance welfare without direct taxation. It was the indirect taxation through inflation, the looting of the money supply that financed big government. And the question, the best answer I have about defending my bill is asking a question: why not? I mean, why in the world should this much power be given to a Federal Reserve that has the authority to create $1 trillion secretly? And Congress says nothing. I mean, why not? I mean, it just means that it just makes so much sense. So the sentiment has changed. It wasn't because all of a sudden the people woke up and decided the Federal Reserve indeed needed to be audited and we needed to know more about the Federal Reserve. It had to do with the TARP funds. It was $700 billion. It's sort of like what they do after the emergency, like 9/11. Well, we need a Patriot Act. If you don't vote for the Patriot Act, you're not patriotic. And they rush that through in a couple of weeks, and nobody gets to read it. But the people want action. So when the crisis hit, TARP funds were passed, $700 billion. There's still a bunch of it floating around, but all of a sudden, some of those funds got into the hands of unsavory characters, like people who ruined their companies, and they ended up getting hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in bonuses coming from the American taxpayer. People say, what is going on? And they send a strong message out to Congress. We want to know what's happening. We want transparency. Let's find out what's happening. But then it became known to so many people at the grassroots level that the Federal Reserve is very much involved. They don't quite understand how the Federal Reserve created our problems, but they understand how the Federal Reserve has been very much involved. So though I have a different motivation for transparency overall because of the monetary system and what's been going on for years, right now the motivation is to know what kind of shenanigans the Federal Reserve has been up to and how they've been wheeling and dealing and bailing out their friends. Congress deals in hundreds of billions of dollars. The Federal Reserve deals in trillions. And it is we don't know exactly how much line of credit, guarantees, and direct loans that they have made and promised. $3 or $4 trillion in the past year. But we don't know exactly. So the real necessity is for us to find out. And then we deal with the aftermath. The bill is mainly to open up the books and find out what's going on. It does not deal with monetary policy. It does not deal with regulatory policy, and it's mainly for opening up the books. So it's less confrontational for those who want to design regulations and deal with monetary policy. And I think that's why we're getting such bipartisan support. The support is very strong, but it is a reflection not of my ability to go around and twist arms, because I have no clout whatsoever over in the Congress, but there are a few spammers out there that are interested in what I've been doing, and they're letting their congressmen know. For that reason, there's a strong move on, and there's a lot of legislative consequences going on where this goes and when we have hearings and whether it gets added on in the Senate. And I don't think we have enough time to go into all those details. But one thing for sure is it's never going to be the same again. Never. Because if tomorrow, if they come in and all the members of Congress, or they remove their names and change this and there's no transparency, all we have to say is, what do they have to hide? And for once, I think it's the first time the Federal Reserve has hired a lobbyist to lobby members of Congress against this bill. And guess where the lobbyist came from? She's a hangover from Enron. She lobbied for Enron, so that's very appropriate. She'll know the ropes, and she'll recognize a Ponzi scheme, and hopefully, but unfortunately, she'll probably be wanting to protect it. So. Anyway, we are very pleased with it, and the thrust of the bill is just openness to find out what's going on. And of course, my ultimate goal will be that once you find out exactly what the Federal Reserve has been up to, and the conclusion being that it's the Federal Reserve that creates financial bubbles. And of course, Congress adds a lot of problems to that, but that's the key to it. And once that is known, and once you see the deterioration of the dollar, which will come, you can't double the money supply in 6 months and not have some consequences to it. That is when we will have true monetary reform, and that's when we'll have a lot more fun.
Ron Paul represents the 14th Congressional District of Texas. You can watch his full comments on Federal Reserve transparency at cato.org.
Great, just great. Stranded.
We don't have State Farm anymore.
Skip, you don't want to see this.
Because I wanted to get the cut rate insurance.
I'm running to the bathroom real quick.
For years, our universe and how it came to be was really a mystery. Theologians and philosophers have filled in the gaps over the centuries, but recent developments in science may give us a clearer understanding of the past, present, and future of the universe. Here now to tell us more about these developments, Lawrence Krauss, theoretical physicist and the author of A Universe from Nothing: Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing. That's a great title.
I thought so.
Welcome back to TVO.
It's nice to be back.
Remind people, you were with us a number of years ago at we did a program in Waterloo title. To more about these developments, Lawrence Krauss, theoretical physicist and the author of A Universe from Nothing: Why There Is Something Rather Than Nothing.
A universe from nothing. So that's basically the concept of this new piece right here that I'm working on. I've been thinking about a way to do it for a while, but it's really weird because a lot of these ideas are very abstract to us because we don't have any way to examine it directly using our faculty. So we have to do mathematical builds to formulate a representation of what we're trying to actually explain. And so it's so hard to understand nothing, to conceptualize nothing. And then it's even harder to conceive something coming from nothing. But apparently that's where all energy, mass, and matter derives from. Is nothing. And so, if you look at the canvas behind me, the top of it is blank. But that's something still. But that's going to be my representation of nothing. And then right below nothing will be everything. And it's like, how do we get from nothing to everything? So, and like I say, it's such an abstract idea that basically it's going to be an abstract painting. I know I don't do a lot of abstract art, and I'm hoping I don't fuck it up. But I'm really going to try my hand at creating this abstract concept of, you know, something from nothing.
That's a great title.
I thought so.
Welcome back to TVO.
It's nice to be back.
Remind people, you were with us a number of years ago at we did a program in Waterloo.
Yes.
At the FBI.
Yeah, so basically here is nothing. There's nothing there. And then right at the blue line is going to be like the Big Bang. And then right below that is going to be like energy and matter. And then right below that, like right behind my head is somewhere is going to be like galaxies and stars and planets. And then it's you in your consciousness, in your physical form, observing the universe, trying to figure out how we got all of this shit from nothing. Something from nothing. Everything from energy to planets to stars to us in our consciousness from here. I think somebody might like that. Now I just gotta make it look cool. The concept is there. Just gotta make it look cool. That's the hard part.
Space exploration.
Right, on the Perimeter Institute. And how are your arms today?
Well, actually, they're pretty tired. I just came in from Australia, so.
I'm a good straight man. I'm just going to set you up all day long. Yeah, so thank you for making the long schlep from Australia to here today. We're really grateful to have you in. I want to know just off the top, when you first published this book, you've got the paperback out now, but when you first published A Universe from Nothing, what sort of reaction did you get?
Well, I was actually surprised at the strength of the reaction. The idea, people were, for me, the idea was to explain the remarkable discoveries in cosmology about the universe in the last 30 or 40 years that tell us we might have come from nothing. But the reaction to this, to saying that we've sort of potentially answering this age-old question, why is there something rather than nothing, was really strong. People were offended. Because after all, for many people, it's kind of the last bastion of God. And if science infringes on that area, it's very terrifying. And I was surprised, not just from theologians, but from philosophers in particular, that this philosophical question of can something come from nothing, the fact that we kind of move the ground underneath their feet really offended some people.
And you were surprised by that offense?
Yeah, I was.
You shouldn't be offended.
Well, I wasn't surprised by that theological offense because I was attempting to offend, but the philosophical one surprised me more.
So why'd you write the book?
Well, I wrote it because our picture of the universe has changed amazingly. I mean, these are some of the most amazing ideas and discoveries in human history, and they confront common sense, but they also give us a new sense of where we come from, which is really what science is all about, really the questions people ask. I mean, for me, the value of science is sort of cultural. It changes the way we think about our place in the cosmos. It's not just the technology, it's the ideas, like art, music, and literature. And what more profound idea than whether we could have come from nothing? And the fact that the universe, what we discovered is that the universe looks like a universe that could have come from nothing. Does that mean it did? No, it doesn't guarantee it. But the fact that that's the case, the fact that that's even plausible, is worth celebrating.
Can you just explain what that means, that it looks like it could have come from nothing?
Well, you know, we live in a universe of 400 billion galaxies, each containing 100 billion stars. There's a lot of stuff out there. And all common sense tells us that all that stuff couldn't come from nothing without some supernatural shenanigans. It seems to violate the laws of physics. But what we've discovered is that, in fact, it's possible. In fact, the total energy of the universe could be zero, which is a first clue that maybe it could come from nothing. That when you, in physics, there's once you include gravity, there's positive energy and negative energy, and our universe appears as if its total energy could be precisely zero, which is the first hint that maybe it could come from nothing. That and the great discovery, which is one of the real reasons I wrote the book, this discovery that nothing is much more complicated than we thought, that namely empty space. You take a region of space, get rid of all the particles and all the radiation, and so there's nothing there. That empty space weighs something, and we don't understand why. And so that wonderful mystery is worth talking about.
Okay, this is going to be the first time of many times over the next 2 days that I say to you, I don't understand. I need you to help me on this. Energy is zero. I look all around. There's lots of energy everywhere. How can you say that the energy of the universe is zero?
Well, let me take you back to one of your favorite times, high school physics, okay? So I throw a coin up in the air, it comes back down. I throw it up faster, goes a little higher, comes back down. If I throw up really fast, it doesn't come back down at all, as long as we forget the roof and all the rest of the stuff. Well, we teach high school students one way to calculate that. We turn it into accounting. It turns out the energy of the coin has a positive piece, we call it the kinetic energy, and a negative piece, which is the potential energy due to gravity, is actually negative. And we add those two pieces up, and if you make the positive piece big enough, so the total energy is positive, it'll escape without coming back down. If the total energy is exactly zero, where the positive energy from the speed is equal to the negative energy from gravity, then it'll just escape. It'll go up, slow down, and never quite stopping. So you see, gravity has this negative piece, and if you can balance the two, the total energy can be zero. And in fact, what's amazing is it turns out one of the things we've measured with in fact, one of the other great discoveries in the last 20 years is we've measured the geometry of the universe. Einstein told us that space is curved in the presence of matter. And one of the big questions of cosmology, the 20th century, in fact, was what's the curvature of the universe? Is it so-called open, closed, or flat? Flat being the boundary between a universe that closes on itself and one that's open. And it turns out that we've discovered the universe is flat, as we theorists knew for reasons we may talk about in a bit.
The Earth is not. But the universe is.
The universe is flat in a three-dimensional sense. It's not flat like a pancake. It's flat like it's the universe you always thought you lived in, where the X, Y, and Z axes are perpendicular and remain perpendicular. Well, what's amazing is it turns out in a flat universe, the energies add up to be precisely zero. The energy of every galaxy, all the galaxies are moving away from us. Hubble discovered that in 1929. Everywhere we look, all the galaxies on average are moving away from us. If you measure their speeds and then you work out the attraction, the two add up to precisely zero. An amazing discovery that confirms this notion that not only is the universe flat and mathematically beautiful, but begins to give this inkling that maybe we could come from nothing.
Okay, but let the record show you're talking physics, not English here.
Absolutely. Physics, not English. Well, I try to make the two balance.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you're talking physics, not reality. In reality, there's lots of energy here, but in physics...
No, I'm talking reality. Physics is reality. But, you know, when we look on Earth, yeah, there's lots of energy, and it's a really weird concept. And throughout our discussion, I suspect, we may violate common sense. And the point is, why should the universe obey our common sense? We evolved on the savannah to avoid lions, and you know, we didn't evolve to understand quantum mechanics. And so one of the great things about science is it forces us to refine our idea of what's common sense. It forces us to have our beliefs conform to the evidence of reality rather than the other way around. The universe may not be like we'd like it to be, but it doesn't really care.
Why is defining nothing considered so controversial in your business?
I don't think it's so controversial in my business. I think, well, look, because we changed the notions. I mean, well, actually, we've begun to define the notions. What is nothing? Well, I think the idea of nothing is the absence of something, right? But that makes nothing a physical quantity, not a philosophical one, because if something's physical, then the absence of something is physical. And as I say, when you think about that, well, what's the absence of something? The simplest version of nothing, it might be empty space, just the nothing of the Bible, an infinite, dark, empty void. But as I've been mentioning, that empty space is actually quite complicated. When we put together quantum mechanics and relativity, two of the foundations of 20th century physics, we put them together and we find out that empty space is actually a boiling, bubbling brew of virtual particles popping in and out of existence every second. So quickly you can't see them. In fact, if you try to measure them, they're not there. But they have an impact that we can actually calculate and predict. And in fact, it produces the best predictions in all of physics. It explains why the atoms in your body behave the way they do, and in fact, why your body has mass. So we know that prediction is true, even though we can't measure those things exactly. But that changes the ground rules. It says that empty space is really complicated. Now, some people say, well, if there's virtual particles there, it's really not nothing. But there are no real particles. You try and measure things there, there's nothing. But those virtual particles can give space energy. And in fact, we've discovered, to our great surprise, it won the Nobel Prize 2 years ago, that empty space has energy. And if you put energy in empty space, then it's really strange because it's not like the normal energy that of you and I, it's not gravitationally attractive, it's actually repulsive. And we've discovered the expansion of the universe is not slowing down like any sensible universe should do. It's actually speeding up. It's getting faster and faster. And that's because it's dominated by the energy of empty space. But it actually gets a little more interesting because you might say, well, look, that's not nothing because there's still space. And I say, okay, but it turns out when you apply quantum mechanics to gravity, then even space itself can pop into existence from nothing. Space and time can spontaneously pop into existence. Whole universes can pop into existence. And most of them will disappear at a time scale so short you wouldn't know about it. The ones that can survive for a long time have zero total energy. And so...
Can you guys get with that? That something came from nothing? That our universe just popped into an existence from nowhere. It's so hard for me to get my head around. But Lawrence Krauss does a really good job of explaining it, even, you know, in empty space. There's still virtual particles, there's still some form of energy that we can't really quantify, but we know is there from observation somehow. And so we're getting closer and closer to the theory that, you know, something can come from nothing, which is flipping mind-boggling. Clint Weedwood. Which tattoo? What, the cross tattoo? Ooh. I did that myself.
Beginning to see the thread here. And then it goes to another stage, which we may get to, where it turns out you may say, okay, well, look, you got no space, no time, no particles, no radiation. That's a pretty good approximation, nothing. But there's still the laws. Who created the laws? And what we've discovered as we think about these things in the last 10 years or so, and again,
the last commission I did was for one of my homeboys. His dad passed away, so he had me paint a picture of his dad for him. I got it. It's right here behind me. I'll show it to you. Let me twist this one dread. This is a double one. Cherokee God. I wonder when I was going to see your ass again. What up, homie? You know what? A black man with woolly hair created everything, the heavens and the earth. Hey, man, if he a man, obviously he ain't create jack because he's just a man. You know what I'm saying? You're talking about something supernatural. Some man with woolly hair didn't create everything, dude. Ooh. Ooh, Trap. Where you get your hair done at? I do my own hair. Ooh, Trap. Who your barber? I trim my own shit. I don't need nobody to do my hair or trim me up. It's not a problem. Yo, Clint, this that's how I did the painting of my homeboy's pops. That's what he had me do for him, yo. Hey, yo. I'm coming here. You can't disrespect the other viewers, bro. What's wrong with you, man? So I've been on this whole God complex and the creation and the origin of everything for a minute. Like I thanks, bro. I go through these phases with this all the time with my research. So for about 4 years, I was reading this right here, Black on Black Violence, the Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in the Service of White Domination. Cherokee God, if you read this book, it will change your life. This is better than the Bible. It will tell you why we act the way we act, and your religion is a part of it. I've been reading things like The Falsification of African Consciousness, Eurocentric History, Psychiatry, and the Politics of White Supremacy. A lot of very interesting stuff. But now, like for the past couple of months, I've been back on the God complex, the supreme consciousness, the origin of life, matter, energy, like where did all this stuff come from? So I've been listening to a lot of different shows, lectures on what is consciousness, people like Lawrence Krauss, who talks about the Big Bang and the theory of where our universe originated from. I listened to this one podcast out of Austin, Texas called The Atheist Experience. And it's just a bunch of atheists who have theists call in and try to argue proof for God. It's hilarious because nobody can prove God, which is the funniest thing. Like, there is no proof for God, but people still believe these old myths and fairy tales. But at the same time, you know, science can't prove exactly where matter and substance come from, but at least they're trying. Can you ask me a serious question? Sure. You can ask me a serious question, bro. God is in the Bible. Once again, bro, I already showed you my copy of the Bible that has the Apocrypha in it. And you know, everybody don't have the same version. That's all it is. There is no Bible. No one has a Bible. A Bible is not in existence in, you know, current times. The best we have are versions of the Bible. And there are so many versions of the Bible that have been translated from whatever, from Hebrew to Aramaic to fucking Sanskrit to goddamn Arabic to Latin to Old English to French to English and the new holiness. Man, that shit been translated so many times, bro. Why would God give his specific orders and directions and have a people, his chosen people, write it down in a language that he knew would eventually die out? He's God. He knows everything. Write it in this language. You're not going to be using this language in like a 1,000 years. It's going to die out and go away. But, you know, instead of writing it in stone like the Egyptians with hieroglyphs, we're just going to use this. We're going to translate it. What up, what up? King James Version isn't tampered with. The simple fact that it is known as a version means by definition that it was tampered with. The title itself, it lets you know this is not the original. This is not the original Bible. This is a version of that. It's like the new Child's Play movie that came out. It's not the original movie. We're not going to do it scene by scene, line by line. We're going to remake this movie. We're just going to make a new version. It's Child's Play. It is. It's the same movie, but it's a different version of the movie. You see what I'm saying? Answer me. If God is real, where is his words? His words is what we consider numbers, actually, bro. When you look at the golden ratio, the irrational number pi, the Fibonacci sequence, that's the language of God. There are certain physical, mechanical operations that we can observe on not the smallest level, but we can get down to a really small level and observe like some of the buildings and how our physical reality functions. And there is a pattern to this shit, and it's not words. We can use numbers to describe it better, but shit works a certain fucking way because it does. That's God. It's not the book, Damascus Road and Sodom and Gomorrah. It's not that. That shit never happened, bro. Those are illusions and allegories, stories and fairy tales, myths sprinkled with a little teeny drizzle of historical evidence. And that's it. For the most part, most of your stories, I cannot find my Encyclopedia of Gods, 2,500 deities of the world. If you look up Krishna, Serapis, Horus, and like 2 or 3 other gods, resurrected gods, and their stories are at least 1,000 years older than the Jesus story. 1,000 years older than Jesus, the exact same story. But we just want to believe the Jesus story. Like Krishna had the same exact story. 800 years before Christ, Krishna had the same story. Immaculate conception, virgin birth, worked miracles, died, was resurrected, had disciples, was called the light, the truth, the way, the lamb. Horus, another very, very well-known story. Horus was born, immaculate conception. His body was dismantled and spread over the land. His body was reassembled, and he was resurrected from the dead. And he worked miracles, and he had followers. And that's 1,000 years before Christ. Where is God's laws? I'm not really understanding. Like and I know it's hard for you to type, bro. But God's laws. Once again, there are certain mechanical elements to how our reality functions and operates. Those are the only laws. Everything else, when you come down to man trying to live and organize themselves in a civil union and community, then that comes from just the evolution of personalities and consciousness and what works best for people you have to live around. You know, like once again, God's laws. It's like the 10 Commandments or whatever, bro. Like you don't really need, like you don't have to be religious and have a Bible and to have like moral codes or like, I don't know, like what are God's laws? All right. You want to show me what, bro? I'm right here with you. What you want me to do, man? I need to be finishing my hair. Moses dropped the tablets. You know what God said, man, fuck the other 5. I ain't gonna write those shit. So look, just take these 10. These was the most important ones anyways. It was just some extra shit. Revelations 1:14. What about yo, where's in Revelations when Satan, ain't that when Satan come to the meeting and God and his angels? I'm going, man. Revelations, you say 1:14. His head and hair were white like wool, as white as snow. And this is the part that people skip out on, because they say his hair was like wool and his feet were like bronze. But right in between that, it gives a description of his eyes. His hair was white as snow, and his eyes like a flame of fire. Huh? His eyes was like a flame of fire. He got red eyes. That's what I'm. And we said that the last time. Like, who got red eyes? Got flame fire eyes? Huh? Man, it's some dream. And his in this 15, his feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. God is dead. Because he drunk wine in Genesis. Jesus isn't even in Genesis, bro. What are you talking about? Jesus is not in Genesis. Fish can't speak proper English. Yeah, but where's that meeting at in Revelations? I need to get more of the Bible memorized. Jesus loved to drink wine. Jesus isn't in Genesis, bro. What are you talking about? Because he drank wine? So I'm gonna have to read the whole fucking book of Revelations over again, because I'm pretty sure there's a meeting in Revelations where God and his angels are sitting at the table, and then Satan just like strolls up in there like, yo, what's up, guys? And God is like, where the fuck you was at? And Satan's like, yo, I was just walking in the earth to and fro. You know what I'm saying? He's like, really? No, is that where that was at? That might be in Job. But then, yo, the Bible weird as shit. And then, ain't in the Garden of Eden, the serpent had legs, and then after the whole shit went down with who ate the fruit and who told who to eat what, who did it first, you know what I'm saying? So after that whole debacle, and God was like, yo, everybody getting a punishment. And he told the serpent, you will crawl on your belly to the end of time, and you will eat dust. And she will bruise you in your head, and you will bruise her in her heel. But then later on, when Satan come to the meeting, he said, when God said, where were you at? He said, I was walking in the earth to and fro. You know, I was just walking around the earth. Well, I thought God took your legs from you. So how you still walking around? Ain't no contradictions in the Bible. Oh, Job 2:1. Yeah, I know it was like one of them shits. They something else in Job too, man. They got Leviathan. Ain't Leviathan in Job and Behemoth? Come on, man. You believe in fire-breathing water dragons? For real? I mean, for real, for real. They might be something to it, because dragons do persist in a lot of cultures, like Asian cultures, Indian cultures, some African cultures, Native American cultures. Like, I can kind of see like maybe a large serpent or something that used to live back then, but not no fire-breathing dragon. Because God don't want everyone to get it. Ain't that some fucked up way for God to be? I'm going to create y'all. I'm going to give y'all free will. And I'm going to make my message to you the only way for your salvation, for you to get back up here with me, but I'm gonna make it so complex, like everybody ain't gonna understand this shit. Like, what the hell kind of game is that? What kind of God is that? That shit don't make no damn sense, bro. It sounds stupid. The Bible is mysterious because God don't want everybody to get it. But God loves everybody, but he got a chosen people. But he loves everybody because he made all of us, but he got a chosen people. And everybody not going to get the Bible. That's how, man, people will argue whatever they can to justify this damn book. The shit don't make sense. Just admit it. It's mysterious. Everybody's not going to understand it. You know why everybody don't understand it? Because it doesn't make sense. Man, my hands are greasy. I can't touch that book right now, bro. Like, that book is 130 years old. My hands need to be clean. I keep it in here where it's nice and cool and shit, but like if I got stuff on my hands, I don't like really picking that book up. But I was planning on reading somewhere in that the Song of Solomon and the Children of something, yo. They was something. There's 2 books in there I want to read, yo. But I know it's all just some more like just woo-ha. Come on, man. Some poppycock. Do God love everybody? That's not what the Bible say, man. God hate motherfucking gays, and goddamn, God hate his own angels who came down and slept with women. God hated everybody for a minute. That's why he caused the flood. I don't know what God problem is, man. He act like he love us sometimes, and he act like he don't love us sometimes. Do God love everybody? I don't know, man. You tell me. You tell me, man. That shit is a mystery to me. It seemed like the serpent loved us more. It's like, look, man, this shit will make you smart. You will understand good and evil. And then how can God tell his first 2 humans not to do something when they're not aware of what's good and bad, what's right and wrong, because they haven't eaten the fruit, so they can't objectify to that. So he gonna give them a command knowing that they don't understand right and wrong, and then when they do something that's wrong because they didn't understand it, he punishes them and their whole lineage and generations for everybody to come. But he died, so he knew that was going to happen, so this is all a part of his plan. Because we disobeyed God is why we went on slave ships. Okay. You know, the Arabs was a major slave trade for a while on the continent, and they still slavery going on today. But that's cool because the Bible condones slavery, and it gives you instructions on how to purchase slaves and how to own slaves, and that was something I couldn't understand in the Bible. Like, you know, if Moses had to get his people out of slavery, why did God even allow slavery to happen? You know what I'm saying? Because he God. And God can do everything. So if God just let slavery go on, like, is he a moral God? Can he not stop the evil from happening? You know? Man, you trying to tell me that most of this Bible happened in northern Africa, the Middle East, around the Mediterranean Sea, and you don't think they was some slaves on some damn ships? Get the hell out of here, man. Be for real. You think motherfuckers just started sailing in the 1400s? Yeah, like. We begged for government. It's weird with the Exodus too. Like, God was able to work all these miracles, right? And bring a famine, and wanted to slaughter the firstborn son of every house, and then to help Moses part the sea to dry land, and people walk across dry land in the midst of water, and there's a pillar of fire by night and a pillar of clouds by day, and then the wilderness and all of this stuff. And then when Moses goes up to the top of the mountain and sees this burning bush for 40 days, how did people lose faith in just 40 days after they witnessed all these miracles? And he come down from the mountain, and then they gyrating, worshiping a golden calf. He's so distraught, he drops the commandments. Like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, don't make sense. God don't want everybody. Then why he made everybody? Huh? Why he made everybody if he don't want us? We just play things for Satan. Huh? And why he gives Satan so much power? If God created the heavens and the earth and Satan and all his other leagues of angels, how was Satan able to leave with 1/3 of all God's angels to go down to his own kingdom that God made for him in hell? Huh? Yo, the God of the Bible is weird, bro. The God of the Bible is weird as hell. Did God want Stephen Hawking? I don't know. And maybe if the universe was curved upon itself, then quantum theories would... Let me stop. That was a really bad Stephen Hawking's impersonation. I shouldn't have did that. I'm not racist. Did God want Stephen Hawking? God creates people to be slaves. Wow. I think that's about the dumbest thing I've ever heard anyone say in my entire life. Not really. He created certain people to destroy for the day of evil. Okay. All right. The day of evil. So, I mean, and what's the point of creating something just to destroy it when, if it's evil, when you can just create good things and everything is always good? Your God is like so wishy-washy. I swear. Once again. And it's not just him. Even when Moses came down from the mount and when God spoke to him, he said, do not worship any other gods before me. He didn't say there were no other gods. He just said don't worship any other gods before me. Because him and his group had their own little shit going. That's why they said, let us create man in our image after our likeness. So the God in the Bible is just like some weird dude who can't seem to get his shit together, bro. And so he has to make all these contracts with the humans that he made, created from dirt, from two people who had a bunch of incest and created everybody else. And then generations later, he has to give them commandments. on how to govern themselves amongst themselves while initiating the institution of slavery for monetary gain. That's all in the Bible. And then he gave birth to himself, to sacrifice himself to himself for everybody else's sin, because we're born in original sin. God is the earth, God is the sky. God is my cat, and turkey will not lie. Am I a Satanist? No, I like analyzing the Bible, and that was an early question that I always pondered over. It is like, why did God get mad for Lucifer or the serpent or whatever? Because I don't even think they say Satan or Lucifer in Genesis. But why did God get mad for the serpent allowing humans to become smarter? And how did the serpent have enough persuasion over God's first two human creations? And how did God communicate with these people through verbal means, and he could not find them for a little while because he called out to them and they were hiding from him? And it's like the God in the Old Testament is weird as hell. He's really weird. And y'all want me to think that shit is true. And it's like, ever since a kid, I grew up in a religious family, and I never believed it. Never. Like, even as a kid, you couldn't even fool me with this shit, yo. God is the trees. God is the clouds. How did the serpent get in the garden anyway? Because God made everything. God made the serpent, knowing that the serpent was going to tempt his first to create. Did God? How does anything go wrong when God already knows it's going to go wrong? And you had to flood the whole earth and wipe everything away from the face of the earth for 40 days and 40 nights and drown everything out because it went wrong. But you should have known that. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's I don't think its original inception was something of malice, but over time, the ruling parties have normally been the religious institutions, because man has this urge to believe in something bigger than himself. And when any institution becomes the authority of society at a given point in history, they're going to use whatever they can to their advantage as a weapon to maintain control over the populations. And the Bible in different religions has been a key factor to maintaining a status quo generation after generation after generation after generation. And it's used in so many ways because the book, if you're versed in it enough, you can make the book say anything you want it to say, such as slavery and servitude is okay, incest is okay, rape is okay, selling your virgin daughters is okay, and you can make that book say anything you want it to say. Right. I don't know. I think religion has been put under a very intensive microscope over the last couple of decades. Just because we're making so many new and advanced scientific breakthroughs that we really do question the fabric of our reality and how we got here. And there's so many different sciences that are devoted to understanding the smallest possible makeup of what we know as our universe. Who created everything? That's what we're trying to figure out, bro. If there is such a singularity that is responsible for creating everything, is it conscious? Is it not conscious? Do you want to call it God? Fine, call that God. But is it the mythological character of the book who had spiritual sex with a woman and gave birth to a dude named Christ? Like, no, the Bible that's not what God is. That is not what God is. The Bible is a bunch of fairy tales, bro. Shit came from somewhere. Wherever it came from, that's God. The Allspark, the Supreme Consciousness, whatever you want to call it. But is it some dude who told Abraham, like, look, bro, if you really, really believe in me, I want you to take your son up to the rocks and sacrifice that motherfucker. If you really believe in me, you'll do it. Oh, psych, I was just playing. I just wanted to see. You was about to do it too, bro. Like, you was really about to kill your son for me. That's fire. You a rider. Like, that God is not real. That God is so false. It's not even, I don't even know how people can believe that. Yeah, Mary and Joseph. Apparently, and he had brothers, and he killed some, and Jesus killed somebody when he was a kid. It's a mysterious book based on a bunch of other mysterious books.
This is speculative, but it's based on everything we know of in particle physics right now. It's quite reasonable to suspect that even the laws themselves came into existence when our universe came to existence. There could be many different universes, and each one of them, the laws of physics are different. They spontaneously arise when the universe arises. So you got no laws, no space, no time, no particles, no radiation. To me, that's nothing.
All right, let me follow up with, I thought, the first big surprise for me in the book, which was, I always thought that physics, and certainly my business, is all about the why. And you tell us quite early on in the book, you're actually not really into the why, you're into the how.
Yeah, sure. Do you have kids?
Explain the diff. Yeah.
Okay. You ultimately know the only answer to the why question is because go to bed.
Why? Because.
Because ultimately, why presumes purpose, if you think about it. It presumes purpose, but what if there isn't purpose? Whenever we say why, we really mean how. We say, let me give an example, which I used in the preface of the paperback version because people were asking me this question. So, Kepler, there used to be 6 planets, okay? And Kepler had a great explanation for why there are 6 planets. They knew their purpose.
Hundreds of years ago, right?
Hundreds of years ago, because God intended to be that way, because there are 5 platonic solids, beautiful platonic solids based of these regular polyhedra. And he said, oh, look, you can fit the 5 platonic solids, and you can fit the orbits of the 6 planets, each of them outside a platonic solid, and there's a beautiful mathematical reason why God, the mathematician, would create this universe. So that was a why answer to the question. But of course, it was completely wrong. There aren't 6 planets. There are 9 planets. To me, there are always going to be 9 planets. Pluto will always be a planet.
You're going to count Pluto.
Yeah, my daughter did her 4th grade project on Pluto, and I'm not going to give it up so easily. But the point is, we know there are lots of solar systems now and around lots of stars, and what we really care about is not why are there 9 planets, but How are there 9 planets? Is our solar system unique, or are there lots of solar systems with many planets? And how did there, are they all have rocky planets on the inside and gas planets on the outside? We want to understand our origins. So the real question is, how are there 9 planets? This question, why were there 6 planets, is really irrelevant. And so when you think about it, whenever we say why, what we really want to understand is how things came to be. And if you insist on why, then you're insisting on purpose. But everything we know about the universe, when you look out, tells us there's no evidence of purpose. Now, I want to be, before you get lots of mail, I want to indicate that doesn't mean there's no purpose. Maybe there is some purpose. There's just no evidence that there's any purpose.
You haven't figured it out yet.
No, it's not that. There's no evidence. The universe behaves just like a universe that had no purpose. Now, to me, a universe that behaves as if it has no purpose and one with no purpose are effectively the same thing. So God is redundant. But we can get into that if you want.
Yes, don't get ahead of me yet. Okay, you show me a Kepler, I'm going to raise you and bring you a Doppler.
Okay.
What's the Doppler effect?
Well, the Doppler effect, there's a cartoon I like to show. It has these 2 cowboys on the plane looking at this train, and one says, I love hearing the lonesome wail.
No. You can be God and not know everything. You're just a portion of God. There's like the double blind experiment with something in particle physics where there's this weird ass particle that behaves a certain way without being observed. But if you observe the particle, then it acts in a completely different way. And physicists are saying the only thing that is actually changing the experience is that we are observing something. So the observation, the presence of the consciousness on the particle makes it behaves differently. And so we observe certain things and things observe us, and it goes all around the world for the connection of consciousness to create a single consciousness, a global universal consciousness. And I feel like, yeah, you don't know everything, but you're still a part of the one. We're all a part of the one, and we're all trying to observe ourselves and figure out what the fuck we are. And it's the universe examining itself. So the piece behind me is just getting started. And this piece is the whole concept of the thing we've been talking about all morning. Where did we come from? And how can you get something from nothing? There you go with that racist God again, yo. How your guy racist though? Huh? How you got a racist guy that sees color? He's only coming back for the blacks, the Latinos, the Indians. Sorry, Asians, your hair is too straight. And that's it. So, I'm not even gonna lie. This is my private Facebook page, and let me scroll down and see if I can find a post that I made a little while ago. If you're ever feeling really stupid, just remember that some people are waiting for this to happen. And it's a picture of the rapture. I died off of that, yo. Like, oh my god. If you're ever feeling really stupid, just remember, some people are waiting for this to happen. Yeah. I guess that's all the Latinos and black people going to heaven. I kill me sometimes. Oh man, that was too funny. Whew. That was a good one. Laugh now, cry later. A supreme being. Salt and pepper. All right, I got an art show tonight, and it's gonna be popping. That's why I'm twisting my hair, so my shit'll be nice and fresh. Ooh. Ooh, chap, who do your hair? I do my own hair. That's sexy. I know, bitch. I'm just joking. I'm just joking. We need Hardy. With the non-believers, really? Trust me, bro. My grandmother raised me, bro. My grandmother was a Christian preacher who had her own church. Had her own church in a congregation of over 50 people. I grew up, well, I lived it my entire life, well, my entire childhood. And that's the time when you're most malleable as a child, and that's why most people even subscribe to a religion, because it's a family tradition, and most people are the same exact religion that their parents are. They don't go out and find a new religion and get indoctrinated by some other culture or cult and become something else. If you grow up Jewish, you're probably going to be Jewish unless you marry some Catholic or some crazy stuff, and that's even shunned upon. If you grow up in a Christian family, you're not just going to be like, oh, well, I think I'm going to be a Buddhist now, you know. And so that's where you get your religion from, is from your tradition. If you were born in the Middle East somewhere, you would probably be some other religion, you know. And hey, Bacon Bitch, what's up? And see, and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? And people who say things like, oh, women shouldn't preach the word of God because that's in the Bible. You know? But my grandmother believed that book so much, she'd get up there and preach every Sunday. Ooh, today, complex ions, better known as complexion. Ooh, it's gonna be hot. I know that's right. Yeah, but that goes to show you how these religious people think, yo.
Whistle as the magnitude of the frequency changes due to the Doppler effect. But the Doppler effect is this famous example. If you hear an ambulance in Toronto, when a car, an ambulance, or a train is coming towards you, the whistle sounds higher. When it's moving away, it sounds lower. That's because sound is a wave, and in front of the train, the waves get compressed, and that means their wavelength gets smaller, their frequency increases, they get stretched out behind the train. It turns out for very different reasons, the same thing happens to light. So we look at stars, and one of the great discoveries of the 18th, or actually almost 17th, but 18th century and then the 19th century, was that star stuff is the same stuff as Earth stuff. We look at the light emitted by stars, and it's the same set of colors that's emitted by hydrogen gas here in the laboratory, telling us that stars emitted hydrogen. In fact, helium was actually first discovered in the sun, before it was discovered here on Earth by looking at that spectrum. So we know stars are made of the same stuff, but if the stars are moving away from us, all those frequencies of light get stretched out by this effect called the Doppler effect. And it tells us that we can measure the speed of stars, and in fact stars and galaxies,
and the
universe as a whole, because if we measure the galaxies moving, if we can see bright enough stars, we can look out and see the whole expansion of the universe. That's what, in fact, Hubble discovered in 1929, is that these galaxies, and by the way, this is really interesting to point out, in 1925, when Hubble first started doing his stuff, the universe consisted of one galaxy. A single galaxy, our own, surrounded by an infinite empty space. That's a human lifetime ago. That's 83 years ago or so. So it's amazing to think that in a single human lifetime, we now know there are 400 billion galaxies. We're like the early map makers. We're just beginning to understand the universe on larger scales, which is not, therefore, surprising that we're surprised all the time, because we keep understanding the universe on larger scales, and it's more amazing than we imagine.
Doesn't it drive you nuts that you're not going to be around in 100 years to know exponentially so much more than you know now?
Yeah, of course it does, but on the other hand, it's an exciting time to live in. It's an amazing time. Our picture has changed completely of the universe. So I'll live with that and I'll live with and I'll be happy with the surprises I'm getting every day.
It's a fraction of what they're going to. Whoever you are 100 years from now, what you know is a fraction of what he or she's going to know.
But I'm happy that what I know is a lot greater than what was known 100 years before.
What an optimist.
Yeah. Well, you know, and although my friend Cormac McCarthy says I'm a pessimist, but that's no reason to be gloomy.
Let's bring up control room if we can. Middle of page 2 here, the image of the standard candle, and there it is. Okay. To measure distance, you use what you call a standard candle. What is that?
Okay, look, you know, we want to measure distances in the universe to see and how the universe is expanding to frame the universe, but we don't have tape measures that are long enough to get the distances between stars are amazing. The distance between us and the nearest star is 4 light years. It takes light 4 years to get to the nearest star. The distance across the Milky Way galaxy is 100,000 light years, and the distance between even the nearest galaxies in our own are millions of light years. So clearly, we have to figure out how can we measure distances. And we use physics, of course. And one of the ways to measure distance, so I can measure distance in the studio. It wouldn't be good TV, but if I turned out all the lights but one in the back of the studio, and you and I are both old enough to remember light meters on cameras, okay, if I knew that was a 100-watt light bulb, and I had a camera here, and I looked and I saw there was 1 watt of light coming into the camera, and I know light spreads out a certain way, I could work out how far away that light is, okay? So if the universe were populated by 100-watt light bulbs, we'd be fine. But it's not, so we look for what's called a standard candle, something whose intrinsic brightness we believe, for many reasons, we understand. And then we look at, say, a distant galaxy and say, how bright is that object? How bright does it appear in that galaxy? And then we work backwards and we figure out how far away the galaxy is. And that's the hard part. That's why Hubble got the answer wrong in 1929. And what's really amazing is that we found what we think is a really good standard candle. In that image you showed, it was a bright spot. And it was as bright as the center of a whole galaxy, which contains 10 billion stars. It was a star that just exploded, the brightest fireworks in the universe, a supernova explosion. And when stars explode, they shine briefly with the brightness of 10 billion stars. And that object up there, which looks like it might be a star in our galaxy, is actually a star in that galaxy that's just exploded. A very particular type of exploding star called a Type 1a supernova. And for reasons that we probably don't need to go into here, it turns out that that's a wonderful standard candle that observers have been able to use to peer out, because supernovae are so bright you can see them across the universe. We can now measure distances across the universe. Now, what is equally amazing to me is that supernovae occur very rarely. It's fortunate for us that stars don't explode more often, perhaps, but it's fortunate for us that they explode. Stars explode about once per 100 years per galaxy. So how can you study these things if it's once per 100 years per galaxy? I often say, well, you can assign a graduate student to each galaxy, 100 years about the right time for a PhD. You've got to just do the stock. Well, they're cheap. You can get new ones. But we don't need to do that because the universe is big.
So my tank top the roof. No, it's hot in here. Plus, my hair is wet, so I don't really like wearing a shirt when I twist my hair. The collar of the shirt just get wet.
Right now, get incredible savings.
Sometimes when we look at religion, they don't give us an opportunity to study the historicity of the place or the geographical locale from which the information derives. I oftentimes find that many of the religions that our people make subscriptions to, they was confronted with those religions in light of them being oppressed by the very people who presented the information to them. And when I ask people, when was the Islam introduced to us as a people, or when was the Christianity introduced to us as a people, or when was the Judaism introduced to us as a people, or just the books in general, we oftentimes find that it was introduced to us while being in a state of servitude. And when I ask, can you show me when it's introduced to our people, void of being in a state of servitude, it's moot. The opportunity to suggest to me otherwise is moot. When we do a philological perusal of these corpus, religious corpus, or these texts, and we ask, like if the Quran says that Allah gives you the book in this language or Arabiya, it sounds great, but then when we undergo the philology of the corpus, we find that the contents of the book was written before the language evolved. So there's no Quranic Arabic, right? Before the Quran, there's the Quran first, and it's written in Syriac. And we even look up the words, and if we go into the etymology of these words, or we do a thorough philological perusal, we see that it was written in Qarshuni, which means they didn't have all the letters to transmit the information in Arabic because it didn't evolve yet, so they borrowed other people's scripts or figures or characters in order to transliterate the information. And in turn, we see that if we go into the Christian language, right, we'll see, if we study the Peshitta, New Testament, written in Syrian, right, not written in the Greek that many people think the New Testament is originally written in, we see that Christians called on Allah first before Muslims called on Allah. His name is in there several times. The Christians worshipped Allah before Muslims were even spoken of. And in fact, there's no documentation of a Muslim until hundreds of years after Prophet Muhammad's death. We don't see no documentation or acknowledgement about Prophet Muhammad's life until 200 years after his death. Doesn't mean that he didn't exist. It just means if I try to sell you a story that exists 200 years thereafter, you would think it's suspect. But with religion, we pacify that. We'll be also told that Prophet Muhammad was illiterate, but the Most High gave him a scripture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would grant this man a scripture. His angel Gabriel will come and tell him to ikra, or to read, in the name of his sustainer. But he's illiterate. But then we look up the word for illiterate, and we see the word ummi there. And we see that it's a homophone. So we know that this is a word that has twofold meaning, but pronounced the same way. And the word ummi means unlettered or unlearned in a scriptural language. So it doesn't necessarily mean he was illiterate. It just means he couldn't understand the language in which the information was presented to him, presuming that he even existed in the first place. But reading and comprehension is lacking in religion, and it's not strictly enforced to learn the language that these religions have their inception in. And thus, I believe
So this is my Instagram. That's a painting I did of me and Fahamu Peku. We took that picture at one of his gallery showings. So that's one painting I did of myself. This is one of a 3-part series called Complex Ion, where I modeled nude 3 times for these pieces right here. So this piece is basically adenine, thionine, cytosine, and guanine. Guanine is the proteins that make up your deoxyribonucleic acids. So I wanted to put a little bit of science in my art. So that was one piece of it. The second piece here is the structure known as melanin. It's what gives your skin its color. And so I modeled nude for that one. And here's another one of me, which is hydrocarbon, which is the fundamental building blocks of life. And so that was a 3-part series of myself. This is a 3-part series called the Dank series. This is me painting a picture of me in a painting. That's hot. Here's another one from the Dank series, which is me again, looking professional with the bong. So this is actually entitled The Professional. The first one was, this is entitled The Artist. This is entitled The Gamer from the Dank series, which is just another self-portrait. So I paint myself all the time. Here's me from the beginnings of the Reader series. I'm sitting on the ledge in an old factory reading a newspaper that says the Obama deception, false flag attacks, and gun bans in America is what's written on the front of that paper. Here's another portrait I did of myself for the Reader series, sitting in front of an old door that has the words Nat Turner 1831 on it. If you guys have never heard of the Nat Turner story or what happened in 1831, I really suggest you should look it up and get familiar with it. I'm holding in my hands a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X. I got my Pilsner right there, a book on the Rothschilds, a book on from Huey P. Newton, a book on American apartheid. So this was a really good piece for the Reader series. Here's another piece I did of myself for the Reader series. I'm sitting in front of my very cluttered bookshelf reading a copy of Chancellor Williams' The Destruction of Black Civilization. This is probably my most well-known piece. Most people will recognize my art from this painting right here. I'm pretty sure I painted myself more than that. Oh yeah, this is the Writer series. So here's another 3-part series where it's me and in deep shadows, and it has an original poem written on each canvas. So that was the Writer. Here's another one from the Writer series with an original poem, and the third one from the Writer series with another poem written on the canvas. And I'm not sure. There might be some more self-portraits in here. I think I have a couple of more pictures I did of myself that I just don't post because they're not really good paintings. But yeah, I paint myself all the time. For the simple fact, it's hard for me to get male models, so when I want to paint a dude, I just normally use myself as the model. It is what it is. A music series. Spot a narcissist. There goes one. That's funny. That's funny. But at the same time, I have my my friend Fahamu Peku. Actually, like I said, in one of the paintings, it's me and another guy. The other artist, he's an internationally known artist. He sells his art in Paris, Turkey, Italy. He's all over Americas, and his artwork speaks for itself. He's a PhD professor at Emory College, Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And he's a very, very accomplished artist. His name is Fahamu Peku. I've actually had the chance to meet him in person a few times. And he only paints himself. He only paints himself. Like, it don't matter. Like, this whole book is just a bunch of paintings of him. And so I said, if my favorite artist can just paint himself all the time, I could paint myself most of the time. At least most of the time. Yeah, this shit hot though. Oh, yeah. Well, his later series, I like this one. He's actually not in this one. Here's a painting that he is not in. I actually went to go see this in person at the Philadelphia Museum for African American Art. He has a display out there right now called Do or Die, and this is a part of his Do or Die series. I went out there and chat with him a little while again. Like, every time he comes close to the area, I always go out and support his shows and all his work and stuff. So yeah, if you're unfamiliar with Fahamu Peku, you should definitely check out some of his art. No, I really don't paint celebrities or really famous people just because everybody else paints them. I'd rather paint naked women. I'd rather fuck naked women, but hey, to each their own. You guys are funny. Alright, what time is it? I got stuff to do today. I ain't even paint nothing yet. It's still early. That's why I got up and got in here early. Did I get all my hair twisted? Nope. I still got like 1, 2, 3. I got like 3 more to go. Alright, if y'all stick around while I twist these last 3 dreads, I'll show you 1 or 2 of my naked paintings of women.
To control people. And if they go for it, then you know you got them. So now you got a whole bunch of people saying that an illiterate man was endowed with something to read and convince everybody else to read. Only religion could create that kind of ideology. Also, I've traveled the world to go to the places that's spoken about. And you go on my Instagram, you go on my Facebook. I've went to King David's temple. And then upstairs is where they say that Jesus had his last supper. And then you go a few blocks down and you say, okay, what else is going on here? You find the place where they say God laid the first stone to create the planet Earth. Jesus was by the Mount of Olives and he looked over there.
Talking about Jerusalem.
Jerusalem. Yeah. I've been to Jerusalem.
I've been there too.
And I stood in the space where they said God created the world, which is also next to the Dome of the Rock.
Yeah, that's the dome. Well, it's in the Dome of the Rock, right?
It's inside.
Yeah, inside the Dome of the Rock. Yeah.
Which is, is like this close to each other.
Right.
Literally, God created the world here, and Prophet Muhammad ascended there. The Mount of Olives is over there, where Jesus cried that the temple would be destroyed. And after a while, I've also been to where Moses was found by the well, which is literally a few feet away from where Mary was hidden in a cave inside of a church. Both of them were named, both of them were babies. Both of them have someone named Mary that saved their life. Jesus was tempted after fasting for 40 days, 40 nights. Moses went through the wilderness for 40 days, 40 nights. They both were in holes. That's called typology, and it's a very popular writing style during that time to extrapolate data from Old Testament and leverage it into New Testament theory or analysis to kind of reinforce the older conviction about God. But if we're not educated in how to approach the reading, then we think all these people existed, and maybe they did.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the thing that about Israel and Jerusalem that I think that every person who is either Christian, Muslim, or Jewish should go to, because what you realize when you go to this place and you start to get the tours and people start to show you around, you realize that these are actually history books. That people, take religion out of them, but when you take a step back, you realize that a lot of this stuff actually happened, all the wars, certain people, and it all happened within like 20 square miles. That's this little area, you can see where the wars were. You can see like where like the Roman soldiers had set up their forts.
You see the bullets on the walls.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That type of thing. And it's like, it kind of puts everything in perspective for you, because as you learn religion, you kind of feel like it's all make-believe and it's all like mystical and so forth. And you realize when you go to Jerusalem that, oh, okay, there's a basis to all this.
That's correct.
And
maybe someone embellished.
Yeah, maybe someone embellished it. Right. Maybe he didn't have 300 wives, but he may have had.
That's a fact.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And these people, you see, like, you can actually, it creates a connection that the first time I went, I've been there about 3 times now. And for example, like, inside Jerusalem is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was built on, which was built
place that Christ went.
Exactly. And then the church is built on top of the place where he was actually crucified, and his tomb is all right there. And it all kind of starts fitting together, and it creates a level of concreteness that I didn't have before.
Yeah. I like the narratives. It invokes a higher spirit and consciousness in man. What I don't like is the imposition of suggesting to people you should believe this, that, or the other, or you're stupid if you don't believe this. Like people tell me, because of my perspective on God, because I don't believe in God. I conceptualized that I should make my highest subscriptions to my ancestors, the ones most immediate to me that passed away, and they will be my medium to connect to the highest source. Now, people may say the source is called God. And then there goes the semantics. So what I would say is my ancestors never confided in something called God. They confided in what's called nature. These are principles that are dissected into different facets of life. And everything on planet Earth, including the Earth, is part of the conspiracy for that one consciousness. And people can call it God, I don't mind. But when I speak, I have to make sure I'm not rendering what my ancestors rendered as nature, as God, because they don't equate. They're just not the same. And with God comes the intimation that I may be speaking about the devil and the angels. I have to be careful about that. You feel me? Because I don't want no one to presume that I'm going along with the rhetoric that has been employed or employed for the purposes of diminishing our intelligence in the community. So I'm always clear that I'm talking about nature. I'm talking about, and what I mean by nature, the letter N as a prefix means agent, okay? And then cher, okay, means ancestor. So an agent of the ancestors.
With Ford Pass, earn rewards points toward complimentary maintenance when you buy or lease a new Ford. How to make the law of attraction work for you. And why?
Some of my new artwork. I'm not sure what I'm gonna call this this piece I'm working on. I've been playing around with a couple names. Maybe it will turn into a series. I really don't want it to be just a standalone piece, but gonna call it something like self-reflection. Whoa, motherfucker. Oh, maybe if I take it out of this box. So what I want to do with this piece is kind of go over the same things we've been talking about all morning and just implement the question in a visual form. And the question is, you can see like the inquisitive look on my eye looking up, and above me will be all of the heavens and galaxies or something. It's going to be very, very, very abstract Let me put that out there first. It's going to be very abstract. But like some galaxies or something, and maybe like some planets and stars. But above that is nothing. And so how did we get everything from nothing is the question that I'm proposing here. How did all of this, including the human being with the consciousness, there's going to be a little symbol I may overlay on top of my forehead, not the third eye or the eye of Horus or something like that. No, it's very similar, but not exactly. So I may even do like a symbol here, and I want to maybe put the golden ratio somewhere in the background. Once again, very vague and very abstract to someone who isn't looking for it. But if you are aware of the golden ratio, it would probably just really pop out to you. And yeah, so I actually intend on leaving the top of the canvas blank. So put a UFO in it. No, but I feel bad not painting this part up here. And it's like I say I've been playing with this idea for a minute, like how to depict something from nothing, and nothing is just like nothing there. So it's like, do I not just paint a portion of the canvas as a representation of nothing, and then it looks like I'm now, I don't know. Wow. So when I pull the tape and that line becomes really straight, it's gonna look like I'm in a box or something. But we'll see how this works out. We'll definitely see how that goes. Alright, so I really didn't intend on painting during this session just because I knew it was going to take a while for me to do my hair this morning. Like I say, because I do have a show coming up. So instead of not streaming at all, I'd rather just chill and have some good conversations and debates this morning. My homeboy Cherokee God come through here and curse my dead grandmother and all kind of crazy shit, but it's all good. I'm gonna still have a good day, you know. A little gas. This motherfucker said UFO. Put a UFO in it. You know what? I could hide something in there like that. Hide like a UFO somewhere like small in the background. That'd be funny. What if aliens did it? But yeah, let me get some more stuff done. Really gotta finish doing my hair. I need to take these knots down and moisturize it and put it in a bun and all kind of shit. I feel so girly when I do my hair. It's weird as hell. The wind blowing outside made the fan speed up. Alright, yeah, I'm procrastinating now. Let me turn this stuff off. I don't know. I really just, like I said, need to finish doing my hair. I need to take something out for lunch real quick too. It's almost lunchtime now, and everything's frozen. Or should I say, take something out for dinner rather? Yeah. So I better go do that now too. I might play some video games. If I play some Apex Legends or something, I might stream it, guys. But other than that, get my glasses, because I keep leaving all of my glasses up here. And this pair, because I was desperately looking for these and couldn't find them, because they're all in the studio. Alright, so we got some projects to mess with. Like I say, we finished the one position. It's back there, that one's done. This one right here, it's about halfway done. And we got this one right here started. So we in here painting, guys. Now I need to come up with a part 2 and 3 to this series right here for the Something from Nothing series, and see how I can work these things out and make them cool and interesting for you guys. Alright, peace till next time.